Inside his sprawling Baghdad mansion, Sinbad the merchant is hosting another spectacular feast. But as his guests laugh and drink in the bright glow of oil lamps, he gives them a chilling warning. To reach this level of comfort, he tells them, he first had to crawl through a mass grave, more dead than alive. That journey began on his fourth voyage, when a furious ocean squall ripped his merchant ship's sails to tatters. The anchor cable snapped, tossing the crew into the crashing waves, until the sea finally spit them onto an unknown shore. Cold and exhausted, the survivors stumble inland, until they are greeted by locals who seem incredibly hospitable. They are led to a grand hall, introduced to a courteous king, and presented with a massive banquet of exotic fruits and fresh coconut milk. But as the men eat, something terrible happens. They lose their manners, then their minds, violently shoving food into their mouths. They chew and slaver like wild animals, their eyes glassy and vacant, completely losing their humanity to an insatiable greed. Sinbad watches in horror as his sated, brainless crewmen are herded into outdoor pens like cattle. Their hosts aren't rescuing them. They are cannibals, and the crew is being deliberately fattened up for slaughter. While his men graze blindly in the fields, growing heavier by the day, Sinbad makes a calculated choice. He refuses to eat. He starves himself, wasting away until he is too skinny to be of interest, keeping his mind sharp enough to slip away while a shepherd looks the other direction. He survives the island by recognizing the danger in unearned luxury. In Sinbad's worldview, a free feast is a trap, and staying alive means maintaining a quiet, calculated vigilance when everyone else is blindly indulging. After days of running, Sinbad eventually finds his way to a magnificent, prosperous city. He immediately notices a quirk in their highly advanced culture. The wealthiest nobles ride thoroughbred horses, but they travel completely bareback. Sinbad recognizes a massive gap in the market. He hires a carpenter for a wooden frame, a tanner for a leather seat, and a blacksmith for iron stirrups. He invents the saddle, demonstrating it to the king and triggering a massive wave of orders. This brilliant piece of entrepreneurship makes him incredibly wealthy in a matter of months. The king is so impressed that he officially integrates Sinbad into the highest ranks of nobility, arranging his marriage to a beautiful woman from an ancient property-owning family. But about a year later, his next-door neighbor's wife falls ill and dies. When Sinbad tries to console the grieving widower, the man reveals a terrifying local custom. On the day of the funeral, the surviving spouse is buried alive in the same tomb. Sinbad's marital contract came with a hidden, lethal clause. His legal right to his estates and his life was now physically tethered to his wife's pulse. The very ambition that pulled him out of poverty is exactly what bound him to this death sentence. A few months later, that pull stops. His wife sickens and passes away, and in an instant, Sinbad's sprawling estates, fine clothes, and noble titles mean absolutely nothing. He screams at the authorities, arguing that forcing the living into the grave is unnatural. But the soldiers ignore his protests, finding him by force. All his accumulated wealth cannot buy a single ounce of mercy from the law. They lower the dead woman into a deep cavern, and then they drop Sinbad in right beside her. They leave him with a pitcher of water and exactly 7 pieces of bread, before the massive stone slab is dragged entirely across the opening above him, completely cutting off the sunlight. He is trapped at the bottom of a pitch-black pit. The air is thick and foul, the floor littered with the decaying remains of generations of spouses who died in the dark under the exact same law. He has gone from a starving castaway to a celebrated nobleman, only to end up in a subterranean crypt. The higher he manages to climb in human society, the deeper and more devastating his inevitable plunge into darkness becomes. But Sinbad doesn't simply wait to die. Down in the dark, a cold, calculated pragmatism takes over. He strictly rations his few pieces of bread and sips his water, fighting to stretch his life out for just a few more agonizing days. As he navigates the dark cavern, his survival instinct merges with his mercantile greed. He realizes that the dead were buried in their finest clothes, covered in the wealth of their estates. Surrounded by rotting bodies, Sinbad goes to work. He methodically feels his way through the dark, locates the corpses, and strips the jewels right off their bones. He gathers a massive fortune of pearls, gold trinkets, and diamonds, piling them high into his turban. Then a sound breaks the silence, a faint rustling and scurrying in the dark. He realizes an animal, a wild dog or a fox, has found its way inside, and if a scavenger can get in, a skinny, starving merchant can get out. He drops to his belly and follows the sound. He shoves his jewel-stuffed turban ahead of him, scraping his skin as he forces himself into a tiny, suffocating dirt tunnel. He wriggles blindly through the earth like a worm, driven purely by the faint rustle of the animal and a distant chink of light. He bursts out onto the sandy shore of the sea, gulping fresh air under a blazing sun. Spotting a merchant ship on the horizon, he ties a piece of a burial shroud to a stick, frantically waving it until the crew sends a boat to rescue him and his morbidly acquired fortune. He returns to Basra, richer than ever. Sinbad's legacy is built on relentless survival, rather than moral purity. His ingenuity and greed are the very things that allowed him to conquer the great.